The insistent ring shattered the quiet afternoon, a jarring intrusion into Eleanor's peaceful solitude. Arthur had just stepped into the shower, the rhythmic thrum of water a comforting backdrop, and his phone, perched precariously on the edge of the coffee table, vibrated with an urgency that suggested it couldn't wait. Eleanor, 60 years old and typically content with the gentle rhythm of her days, sighed. Arthur was usually meticulous about keeping his phone close, a habit born from years of demanding business calls. An emergency, perhaps? Or merely a lapse in his usual vigilance? She reached for it, a slight annoyance mingling with a flicker of concern. The caller ID was hidden, a generic unknown number blinking on the screen. Pressing it to her ear, she expected to hear a harried business associate or a distant relative, but what she heard instead sent a chill snaking down her spine. Arthur's voice, hushed and strangely conspiratorial, came through the receiver, muffled as if he were trying to speak discreetly. 2 more weeks, he was saying, his tone low, almost a murmur. Just 2 more weeks of giving her the medication, and then we can finally have her committed. Eleanor froze, the phone pressed hard against her ear. The words hung in the air, cold and menacing. Her? Medication? Committed? A wave of unease washed over her, a premonition of something deeply wrong. Who was he talking about? And what kind of medication would lead to someone being committed? Her mind raced, trying to conjure a scenario, any scenario, that made sense of his chilling pronouncement. Was it a relative? A friend in distress? Then a second voice joined the conversation, softer, higher pitched, yet unmistakably familiar. A laugh, light and almost giddy, followed by a playful complaint. Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat. No, it couldn't be, not that voice, not her. A sickening realization began to unfurl in her gut, a cold dread displacing the initial confusion. Don't worry, Arthur, it's working perfectly. The voice purred, distinct now, clear as a bell. She's so wonderfully confused, so forgetful these days. They'll never question it. It will all look like natural decline. It was Serafina, her daughter-in-law. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Serafina, her son's wife, the woman Arthur had just referred to as her. Eleanor's first, most primal thought was betrayal. Arthur, her husband of 40 years, was having an affair with Serafina. The sheer audacity, the sickening depravity of it, left her reeling. How could he? How could they? The pain of infidelity, sharp and visceral, momentarily eclipsed all other thoughts. Then Serafina's voice continued, pulling Eleanor back into the horrifying reality of their conversation. Soon, my love, we can finally be together openly. No more hiding. Arthur's response was a low hum of agreement, laced with an intimacy that made Eleanor's stomach clench. But it wasn't just the affair anymore. The medication, the confusion, the committed, all those fragments clicked into place with a horrifying, stomach-lurching clarity. They weren't just having an affair, they were plotting against her. The full, monstrous truth descended upon Eleanor like a shroud of ice. They weren't just cheating, they were poisoning her slowly, methodically, to induce symptoms of mental decline, to have her declared incompetent, to have her committed, so they could be together openly, so they could take everything she had worked for, everything she cherished, the house, the savings, her very autonomy. Eleanor's mind reeled back through the preceding weeks, through a tapestry of vague symptoms she had dismissed as the inevitable march of time. The persistent grogginess, a dull, heavy cloud that seemed to cling to her thoughts even after a full night's sleep. The disorienting moments when she would find herself in a room, unable to recall why she had entered it. The terrifying lapses in memory, forgotten conversations, misplaced objects, the names of dear friends occasionally dancing just beyond her grasp. She had attributed it all to aging, to the natural erosion of the mind, a gradual sorrowful surrender to the years. Doctors had nodded sympathetically, murmuring about age-related cognitive decline, reinforcing her own quiet fears. But now the puzzle pieces snapped into a grotesque whole. Serafina's sudden, attentive solicitude, always bringing over immune-boosting smoothies, memory-enhancing supplements, insisting Eleanor drink her special homemade meals. Eleanor remembered the strange bitter aftertaste sometimes, the slight grittiness, which she had politely brushed off as exotic herbs or unusual spices. Each act of supposed kindness, each thoughtful gesture, now twisted into a chilling act of malevolence. The very food and drink she had trustingly consumed, offered by the hand of her beloved daughter-in-law, had been laced with her slow demise. The shower head sputtered to a halt. Arthur would be out any second. Panic flared, cold and sharp, but it was quickly subsumed by an icy, unprecedented calm. She could not let them know she knew. Not yet. Her fingers, though trembling slightly, moved with surprising speed across the phone screen, deleting the call log, wiping any trace of the conversation. She took a deep, steadying breath, forcing her features into a mask of placid normality, her heart thundering a fierce, defiant rhythm against her ribs. Arthur emerged from the bathroom moments later, a towel wrapped around his waist, humming a tuneless melody. He smiled at her, a casual, untroubled smile that now seemed utterly monstrous. "Serafina called," he said, reaching for his phone, oblivious. "She's bringing dinner over tonight. Said she made your favorite coq au vin." The words were a hammer blow. Dinner. Another dose. Eleanor's stomach churned, bile rising in her throat. She forced a smile in return, a polite, "How lovely," that tasted like ash and betrayal. The devastation was immense, a gaping wound where her marriage and family had once stood. But even as her world shattered, a cold, crystalline clarity settled over her. She was not incompetent. She was a target, and she would not be committed. She would fight, and they would regret the day they ever underestimated Eleanor. The doorbell chimed precisely at 7, a saccharine melody that twisted in Eleanor's stomach. Serafina stood on the porch, a casserole dish steaming gently in her hands, a bright, seemingly caring smile plastered across her face. Her blonde hair, perfectly coiffed, framed eyes that now, to Eleanor, held a sinister glint. The usual warmth Eleanor felt at seeing her daughter-in-law had evaporated, replaced by a cold, searing hatred. Every dimple, every crinkle at the corner of Serafina's eyes, once endearing, now seemed part of a meticulously crafted performance. It was a mask, expertly worn, and Eleanor, with her newfound horrifying knowledge, saw through it clearly. "Eleanor, darling, Arthur!" Serafina's voice was light and airy, full of feigned affection. "Coco Van, just as promised. Hope you're both ravenous." Eleanor forced a small, tremulous smile, a performance of her own. "Serafina, how wonderful. You spoil us." Her voice sounded thin and wavering, a perfect imitation of the confusion they expected. As Serafina bustled into the kitchen, setting the dish down with a flourish, Eleanor observed her with new terrifying clarity. Serafina wasn't just a pretty face, she was a registered nurse. The memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. Serafina had always been so proud of her medical background, talking about patient care, pharmacology, the precise science of healing. But now Eleanor understood that same knowledge could be twisted, perverted into methodical incapacitation. Serafina knew exactly how to administer substances, how to monitor their effects, how to make the subtle decline appear natural. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through Eleanor. Suddenly, every past caring gesture from Serafina took on a chilling new meaning. The morning coffees, always prepared by Serafina during her frequent visits, often with an added boost. The small, colorful pills Serafina had insisted were special vitamins for aging gracefully. The daily smoothies, thick and vibrant, supposedly packed with antioxidants. Each act, once a testament to Serafina's thoughtfulness, was now replayed in Eleanor's mind as a deliberate, insidious act of slow poisoning. The realization was a gut punch, the betrayal so profound it left her breathless. Tonight, at least, there was one small mercy. Michael, Eleanor's son and Serafina's husband, was working late at the hospital. A convenient alibi for Serafina's regular, unchaperoned visits, allowing her ample time with Arthur and ample opportunity to continue her nefarious work. The thought of her son, oblivious to the monstrous deception unfolding around him, brought a fresh pang of sorrow. Arthur joined them shortly, freshly showered and dressed in casual slacks. He offered Serafina a glass of wine, his hand lingering on her arm a fraction too long, their eyes meeting in a brief, conspiratorial glance that spoke volumes. The subtle intimacies, the shared secrets passing between them in silent gestures, confirmed the affair with a sickening certainty. Eleanor recalled an incident from about 6 months ago. She had walked into the living room and found them on the couch, heads close, their hands almost touching. At the time, she dismissed it as her overactive imagination, a momentary lapse of propriety. Now it was clear she hadn't imagined a thing. During dinner, as Arthur prattled on about his day and Serafina chimed in with overly enthusiastic responses, the conversation eventually turned to Eleanor's health. "You know, Eleanor," Serafina began, her voice dripping with false concern, "we've been so worried about you lately. All these little forgetful moments. It's natural, of course, but Arthur and I were thinking maybe it's time to see Dr. Albright again, and perhaps, maybe even consider a part-time caregiver." Arthur nodded gravely, picking at his food. "Yes, darling, just for a few hours a day, someone to help with errands, keep you company, give you a bit of a break." The suggestion landed like a lead weight. A caregiver, of course, another layer of their control. Someone to monitor her to ensure she took her medication, to report back on her perceived decline. Eleanor forced a frown, feigning a moment of confusion. "A caregiver? Oh, Arthur, I don't think that's necessary. I manage perfectly well, thank you. Just a bit tired sometimes, that's all." She mustered a flicker of irritation, a defense mechanism they might expect from someone who felt their independence threatened. "I'm not ready for a stranger in my home." Her firm rejection seemed to momentarily deflate their plans, a flicker of annoyance passing between Serafina and Arthur, quickly masked. They dropped the subject, but the seed had been planted. After dinner, pleading a sudden fatigue, Eleanor excused herself, leaving Arthur and Serafina to clear the table. The sight of them together in her kitchen, their heads bent in quiet conversation, filled her with a terrifying resolve. This was her chance. She made her way to Arthur's home office, a room usually off-limits. Her hands trembled slightly as she switched on the computer. His password, their anniversary date, was a bitter irony. Her heart pounded as she navigated through his emails. It didn't take long. There, in his sent folder, were multiple inquiries to various psychiatric facilities, some specializing in long-term care for dementia patients. There were detailed questions about admission processes, costs, and visiting hours. And then, the final sickening confirmation, correspondence with a lawyer. The subject line, "Update to last will and testament." Eleanor scrolled down, her eyes scanning the chilling words, granting full power of attorney to Serafina Hayes, designating Serafina Hayes as sole beneficiary. They weren't just planning to commit her, they were planning to erase her entirely, to lock her away, strip her of her assets, and rewrite her legacy while she was still alive. The reality was colder, more brutal than she had even imagined. With a deep, shuddering breath, Eleanor logged out, leaving no trace of her intrusion. She returned to the kitchen, resuming her act of mild confusion, her gaze unfocused. Serafina, ever the doting daughter-in-law, had packaged up the leftover coq au vin for Eleanor's lunch the next day. "And don't forget your special vitamins, Eleanor," she chirped, placing a small, unmarked bottle on the counter. "They're essential for your memory." Eleanor nodded, a wan smile playing on her lips. "Oh yes, of course. My vitamins." As soon as Serafina and Arthur were settled back in the living room, ostensibly watching television but undoubtedly reveling in their shared secret, Eleanor discreetly disposed of the entire casserole dish. It went into the garbage disposal, ground to an unrecognizable pulp. The small bottle of vitamins she carefully tucked away, deep in the back of a seldom-used pantry shelf, for later analysis. The pain of betrayal was still a raw, aching wound, but beneath it, something hard and unyielding had formed. It wasn't despair, it was an unwavering determination. They had underestimated her. They thought she was declining, a fragile old woman fading into oblivion. But Eleanor was anything but. She was a woman scorned, awake, and ready for war. The morning light, usually a gentle invitation, felt sharp and invigorating as Eleanor woke. For the first time in what felt like months, her mind was clear, unclouded by the pervasive fog that had become her constant companion. The grogginess was gone, the dull ache behind her eyes a distant memory. It was as if a heavy curtain had been lifted, revealing the sharp contours of her own thoughts, the keen edge of her memory. She felt for the first time in a long time, truly herself, and the realization of how much she had been missing, how much of her own essence had been stolen from her, fueled her quiet rage. Beside her, Arthur snored softly, his face placid in sleep. The man who had shared her bed, her life, for 40 years was now nothing more than a stranger, a conspirator. All the affection, the tenderness she had once felt for him had evaporated, replaced by a cold, searing disgust. His peaceful sleep was a testament to his guilt, his utter lack of remorse. Carefully, so as not to disturb him, Eleanor eased herself out of bed. She went to the pantry where she had hidden Serafina's vitamins the night before. With a steady hand, she removed 3 of the small, unmarked capsules, placing them in a tiny plastic bag. Then, from her own medicine cabinet, she selected 3 identical-looking, harmless vitamin B capsules and carefully swapped them into Serafina's bottle. The deception was small, almost insignificant, but it was her first tactical move. She stood for a moment, looking at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The lines around her eyes seemed deeper, the silver in her hair more prominent. They saw an old woman, frail and forgetful. She would give them that old woman. She would play the role, meticulously, flawlessly. Because that old woman was her shield, her disguise, allowing her to gather the evidence she needed to dismantle their monstrous plot. At breakfast, Eleanor moved slowly, deliberately. She fumbled with the sugar spoon, spilled a few drops of coffee, and asked Arthur to repeat himself twice, her gaze slightly unfocused. She was a master of the performance, drawing on weeks of involuntary rehearsal. Arthur watched her with a clinical, detached expression that made her skin crawl. "You didn't take your vitamins this morning, darling," he observed, his voice devoid of warmth. "You often forget them. Perhaps that's why you've been having trouble sleeping lately." He pushed the bottle of swapped pills closer to her. Eleanor gave a theatrical sigh, a perfect blend of resignation and mild confusion. "Oh dear, did I forget again? My memory, it's just not what it used to be." She picked up one of the swapped capsules, the harmless vitamin B, and swallowed it with a gulp of water, her eyes meeting his for a split second. A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk played on his lips, a flicker of satisfaction that made her blood run cold. Once Arthur had finished his breakfast and set off for his customary morning walk, Eleanor wasted no time. She retrieved her phone and dialed a familiar number. Beatrice, her oldest friend, a retired lab technician from the local hospital, answered on the second ring. "B, it's Eleanor," she began, her voice low and urgent. "I need a favor, a big one, and it has to be completely confidential." Beatrice, ever perceptive, sensed the gravity in Eleanor's tone. "Eleanor? What's wrong? You sound different." "I'll explain everything when we meet. Can you meet me at the old Coffee Bean on Elm Street in an hour? I have some pills I need discreetly tested. I can't go to the hospital." Beatrice didn't hesitate. "Consider it done. I'll bring my portable kit. An hour, Eleanor." With that arranged, Eleanor moved with purpose. She knew Serafina often left her purse in the guest room during her visits, a casual disregard for privacy that now served Eleanor perfectly. Her heart hammered in her chest, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through her veins. She found the purse on the vanity. Inside, nestled beneath a wallet and a compact, was a small cylindrical vial of clear liquid. Beside it, a package of disposable syringes and a small folded piece of paper with handwritten notes. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the paper. It detailed dosages, frequency, and observed effects. Day 170.5, increased drowsiness, mild disorientation. Day 8 to 14, 0.7 millis, noticeable memory lapses, increased confusion. Aim for complete cognitive impairment by week 4. The words were a blueprint for her destruction. With her phone, Eleanor meticulously photographed everything. The vial, the syringes, the dosage notes. She captured every angle, every detail, ensuring the timestamps on her photos would be undeniable. Then, with painstaking care, she replaced every item exactly as she had found it, leaving no trace of her intrusion. Her next target was the kitchen. She remembered seeing a small, nondescript container in Serafina's bag of gifts last night, distinct from the vitamin bottle she had already swapped. She found it tucked away in the back of the pantry, hidden behind a box of cereal. It was a smaller container, identical in shape and color to the vitamin bottle, but felt subtly heavier. Inside, she found more of the same small white capsules. A quick, intuitive comparison told her these were different. These were the real poison. Serafina must have a separate, more concentrated supply for herself, or perhaps for direct administration when Arthur wasn't around. Eleanor carefully took a few of these too, adding them to her growing collection of evidence. Just as she finished, the sound of Arthur's key in the front door startled her. She quickly slipped the incriminating pills into her pocket and hurried back to her armchair in the living room, slumping down, feigning confusion and weariness, her gaze drifting vaguely out the window. Arthur walked in, his cheeks flushed from the brisk air. He looked at her, his expression a familiar blend of pity and detached concern. "You look a bit peaky, darling. Did you remember your vitamins?" Eleanor blinked slowly, a perfect simulation of mental sluggishness. "Vitamins? Oh, yes, I think so, dear. It's hard to remember these days." He sighed, a practiced, long-suffering sound. "Well, try to rest. Perhaps a nap would do you good." He walked away, ostensibly convinced of her continuing decline. Eleanor watched him go, a grim satisfaction settling in her heart. He thought she was fading. He had no idea the game had already begun. The coffee meeting with Beatrice had been swift and devastating. The pills, the clear liquid, the small, heavy capsules from the pantry, all tested positive for a potent sedative, specifically a benzodiazepine, and a strong antipsychotic, both in dangerously high doses. Beatrice, her face grim, had confirmed Eleanor's worst fears. "Eleanor," she'd said, her voice hushed, "this isn't just about making you sleepy. These are drugs designed to induce symptoms of severe cognitive impairment. This is criminal." The confirmation solidified Eleanor's resolve. She wasn't just fighting for her property. She was fighting for her mind, her freedom, her very existence. Back home, Eleanor sat at her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a newfound urgency. She discreetly ordered a set of tiny wireless security cameras, no larger than a button, designed to blend seamlessly into household objects. She envisioned placing them in strategic locations: the kitchen, the living room, perhaps even her bedroom. Visual evidence, irrefutable proof of their insidious actions, would be paramount. They thought her confused, oblivious. She would show them just how wrong they were. That evening, the doorbell chimed again. Serafina, resplendent in a vibrant scarf, arrived with another special meal. "A shepherd's pie," she announced, her smile wide and practiced. Eleanor's stomach twisted with disgust, but she forced a wobbly smile in return, allowing her expression to cloud with artificial confusion. "Serafina, dear," Eleanor said, her voice a little too high, a little too frail. "You look lovely tonight. Did you say something about me looking better? Everything feels so foggy these days, it's hard to tell." She wanted to gauge Serafina's reaction, to see if the drugs were affecting her in the way they intended. Serafina's smile didn't falter, though her eyes held a flicker of something unreadable. "Oh, Eleanor, you're just a little tired. It's perfectly normal. But don't worry, those special vitamins will help. They take time, of course, but you'll start feeling clearer. I promise." She patted Eleanor's hand with a warmth that now felt utterly chilling. As Serafina moved about the kitchen, bustling with feigned helpfulness, Eleanor watched her like a hawk. Serafina dished out generous portions of the shepherd's pie. As she served Eleanor, her movements were swift, practiced. From a small, almost imperceptible container tucked into the palm of her hand, she quickly sprinkled something over Eleanor's plate, a fine powder that disappeared into the gravy. It was over in a blink, a movement so quick and subtle that anyone not specifically looking for it would have missed it entirely. But Eleanor saw, her heart pounded, a silent testament to the insidious danger lurking in her own home. Arthur joined them at the dining table, his presence adding another layer to the twisted charade. Serafina, ever the concerned caregiver, cleared her throat. "Arthur, darling, I spoke with Dr. Albright's office today. I made an appointment for Eleanor next week. Just a routine checkup. You know, a complete physical. It would be good to get a professional opinion on, well, on everything. She glanced meaningfully at Eleanor, a look of profound concern etched on her face. Arthur nodded gravely. Excellent idea, Serafina. Eleanor, you need to be taking better care of yourself. We're all worried. Serafina continued, her voice softening, laced with a venomous sweetness. Yes, Eleanor. We're just concerned about your symptoms, the memory issues, the confusion, and sometimes your mood swings. It's just not like you. We should explore all the available treatment options. Treatment options. The phrase hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threats. Eleanor knew precisely what treatment options meant to them. Stronger drugs designed to truly incapacitate her, or worse, forced institutionalization. A padded room, a locked ward, a life sentence of oblivion. A shiver ran down her spine, but she suppressed it, forcing a meek, helpless expression onto her face. Oh dear, Eleanor murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Whatever you think is best, Serafina. I don't know what to do anymore. She managed to sound utterly defeated, completely under their influence. The look of satisfaction on Serafina's face was palpable, a tiny triumphant gleam in her eyes. Arthur too seemed to relax, convinced their plan was progressing smoothly. Later, after Serafina had departed with a theatrical hug and a reminder to get a good night's rest, Eleanor sat alone at the dining table, staring at the untouched plate of shepherd's pie. The poisoned food sat there, a silent monument to their calculated deception, to the depths of their depravity. The weight of it settled over her, a crushing burden of betrayal and sorrow. But the sorrow quickly hardened into something else. She scraped the shepherd's pie into a plastic bag, sealing it tightly, then placed it in the freezer. More evidence. She took out her phone and meticulously photographed the bottle of pills, the vial, the syringes, the dosage notes. Her evidence pile was growing, a grim testament to the meticulous planning of her enemies. As she prepared for bed, standing before her bathroom mirror, Eleanor stared at her reflection. She saw not the confused, aging woman they believed her to be, but a flicker of the sharp, resilient woman she once was. Her eyes, though tired, held a fierce spark of defiance. Her chin was lifted, her shoulders squared. They had tried to destroy her, to erase her, to condemn her to a living death. But their monstrous scheme had backfired. Instead of breaking her, it had awakened something primal, a fierce resolve she hadn't known she possessed. She would not be a victim. She would fight back. And she would reclaim her life, piece by agonizing piece. The story you're hearing isn't just about betrayal. It's about fighting back when everything you thought was true shatters around you. Stay with me to see how I turn the tables. And if my journey resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe to hear the rest of my story. 3 days later, the phone rang, and Eleanor knew it was Beatrice. Her friend's voice, usually steady and composed, was laced with thinly veiled horror. Eleanor, I have the results. It's worse than we thought. Beatrice confirmed her suspicions. The pills contained a dangerous cocktail of potent sedatives and anti-anxiety medications. Specifically, a high dose of benzodiazepines mixed with a powerful antipsychotic, likely Haldol. The lab results unequivocally showed that these drugs were designed to systematically cause confusion, memory loss, and severe disorientation. Eleanor, you've been systematically drugged for months, Beatrice stated, her voice tight with anger. The levels in these pills, combined with what was in the liquid, it's a recipe for severe cognitive impairment. Then came the chilling revelation that truly struck fear into Eleanor's heart. If the dosage had been increased even slightly, or mixed with alcohol, the combination could have caused respiratory depression, cardiac arrest, even death. Eleanor, they weren't just trying to commit you, they were willing to kill you. The phone call ended, but Beatrice's words echoed in Eleanor's mind, a cold, hard truth. They weren't just planning to steal her assets or lock her away. They were willing to risk her life, to casually snuff it out if it meant achieving their twisted goals. The full, brutal extent of their depravity settled over her, chilling her to the bone. Despite the shock, a steely resolve formed in Eleanor's mind. Involving the police immediately felt premature, too swift, too clean. She wanted more. She wanted them to confess, to betray themselves in front of witnesses, to fully expose their monstrous plot. She wanted them to taste the bitter irony of their own methods. No, she wouldn't call the police yet. She would set a trap. Over the next 2 days, Eleanor intensified her performance. Her act of confusion became almost flawless. She left the stove burner on, pretending to be startled when Arthur pointed it out. She forgot an important doctor's appointment, later apologizing tearfully for her poor memory. She misplaced her reading glasses multiple times a day, searching frantically for them in obvious places. Each deliberate mistake was carefully calculated to reinforce their perception of her irreversible decline. Arthur, Arthur, for his part, played his role perfectly. He expressed worry, his brow furrowed with a feigned concern that made Eleanor want to scream. "Perhaps we should move up your doctor's appointment, darling," he'd suggest, his tone grave. But behind the mask of concern, Eleanor caught glimpses of a sick satisfaction in his eyes, a glint of triumph that her perceived deterioration was progressing exactly as planned. On Thursday afternoon, Eleanor initiated the next phase of her plan. She made a phone call to her son, Michael. "Michael, darling, it's Mom," she began, her voice wavering slightly, carefully calibrated to sound frail and a little lost. "I was wondering if you, Serafina, and the children could come for dinner this Saturday? I'd like to make a proper family meal, just one more time." She emphasized one more time, letting the words hang in the air, hinting at a surrender, a final embrace of her fading self. She wanted them to believe she was giving up, that she was accepting her fate. She wanted them to become overconfident, careless. Michael, always a kind son, though often oblivious to the undercurrents in his family, immediately agreed. "Of course, Mom. That sounds lovely. We'd love to come." Her second call was to her daughter, Clara, who lived 2 hours away. This call was different. Her voice, though still softened, carried an undercurrent of urgency that only Clara, her sharpest child, would detect. "Clara, dear," Eleanor said, keeping her voice low, "can you come this Saturday night? It's a family dinner. I need you to be here. It's a surprise for a very serious reason. Don't tell anyone you're coming." Clara paused, her innate suspicion immediately piqued. "Mom, what's going on? Are you all right? You sound strange." Eleanor feigned a sniffle. "Oh, it's nothing specific, darling. Just an old woman's worries. I just need my family around me right now. Please, Clara, for me." Clara, though still clearly concerned, agreed. "All right, Mom, I'll be there. I'll just tell Mark I'm visiting a friend for the weekend." With the invitations extended, Eleanor turned her attention to her new arrivals. The tiny security cameras, ordered online, had arrived that morning. They were indeed minuscule, cleverly disguised as innocuous objects, a small decorative owl, a miniature picture frame, even a faux flower pot. Eleanor spent Friday afternoon meticulously setting them up. In the dining room, one camera was hidden within the fake flower arrangement in the center of the table, perfectly aimed to capture the entire table. Another was nestled in the bookshelf, overlooking the living room. A third, almost invisible, was placed near the kitchen doorway, its lens trained on the main preparation area. She tested each one, ensuring they were recording audio and video, their tiny lights blinking imperceptibly. She made sure the Wi-Fi connection was strong, ensuring a live feed and cloud backup for everything. She knew this was a dangerous game, a high-stakes gamble. But the alternative, a slow, drugged demise, was far worse. She was ready. Saturday morning dawned, crisp and clear, but for Eleanor, it held the gravitas of a final act. With a meticulous precision she hadn't felt in years, she began preparing what she privately thought of as the Last Supper. The kitchen, usually a place of comfort, hummed with a different energy today. She cooked all of Arthur's favorite foods, a rich beef bourguignon, creamy gratin potatoes, a fresh asparagus salad. Each dish was prepared with a bittersweet intensity, a poignant reminder of the life they once shared, now irrevocably tainted. By late afternoon, the dining room was transformed. The antique mahogany table gleamed under the soft glow of candlelight, set with her finest china and crystal glasses. A bouquet of white lilies, elegant and pure, graced the center. She uncorked an expensive bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, letting it breathe, determined that if this was to be her confrontation, it would be conducted with style, with dignity. Arthur appeared just as she was lighting the last candle, drawn by the tantalizing aromas wafting from the kitchen. He smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that made Eleanor's heart ache with a pang of remembered love, quickly followed by a rush of cold contempt. "Eleanor, my dear, what a feast. It smells absolutely wonderful." He approached her, his arms encircling her in a familiar embrace. "I love you, my darling." Eleanor returned the embrace, a performance she had mastered. His touch, once comforting, now felt like a viper's coil. His murmured words, once cherished, now sounded like a hollow mockery. She pressed her face into his shoulder, closing her eyes, allowing herself a brief, private moment of anguish. "Oh, Arthur," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. But it wasn't the emotion he expected. It was the crushing weight of heartbreak for a love that had lasted over 3 decades, now exposed as a cruel deception. "I do love you too," she added, the lie tasting like ash, but essential for the act. Precisely at 6 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. Michael, her earnest, unsuspecting son, stood there with Serafina, who was dressed impeccably, a vision of false virtue. They carried a bottle of wine and a dessert. Serafina's eyes, bright and calculating, swept over the elegant table settings. "Eleanor, darling," Serafina exclaimed, stepping inside. "Everything looks absolutely beautiful. You've truly outdone yourself." She then produced a small, prettily wrapped package. "And look what I brought you. A fresh bottle of your special cognitive function multivitamins. You know, to keep that wonderful mind of yours sharp." Eleanor took the poisoned bottle with feigned trembling hands, her fingers brushing Serafina's cold ones. She ensured her grateful words were captured by the hidden cameras. "Oh, Serafina, you're too kind. I truly hope these help. I hope I don't forget to take them." She looked at Serafina with a watery, hopeful gaze, playing the part of the fading, grateful elder. Serafina patted her arm, her smile unwavering, but her words held a subtle, chilling edge. "Don't worry, Eleanor. With us here, you'll never have to find out." The sentence, meant to sound reassuring, resonated with Eleanor as a veiled threat, a chilling echo of their dark intentions. They moved into the living room for cocktails. Michael, oblivious, chatted animatedly about his work. Eleanor, glass of sparkling water in hand, observed the subtle, inappropriate intimacy between Arthur and Serafina. Their eyes met more often than necessary, lingering glances passing between them. Serafina would laugh a little too long at Arthur's jokes, and Arthur would brush her arm or lower back a little too frequently. They were careful, but not careful enough. Not for Eleanor's newly sharpened gaze. The cameras, tiny and silent, were capturing every stolen touch, every conspiratorial glance. The conversation drifted, light and superficial, until Eleanor announced, "Dinner is served." They all rose, ready to move to the dining room. Just as they were about to take their places, a sudden, unexpected ring of the doorbell cut through the air. Everyone exchanged puzzled glances. Eleanor, feigning a moment of confusion, said, "Now, who could that be?" She walked to the door and opened it. Standing on her porch, 2 hours earlier than expected, was Clara. Her daughter looked confused, her eyebrows furrowed as she took in the sight of her family, dressed for a formal dinner. "Mom, what's going on? You didn't say it was a formal dinner party. And why is everyone here already?" Arthur and Serafina exchanged a tense, flustered look. The surprise, the carefully constructed facade, was momentarily threatened. Their eyes darted between Eleanor and Clara, a silent calculation of the unexpected variable. Eleanor, reveling in their discomfort, played her part perfectly. "Clara, dear," Eleanor said, her voice laced with feigned bewilderment. "Oh, goodness, I didn't realize. Did I invite you for tonight? My memory, you know." She trailed off, offering a fragile, apologetic shrug. Serafina, ever quick to regain composure, stepped forward, her smile quickly snapping back into place. "Clara, what a lovely surprise. Of course you are welcome. We'll just set another place. Eleanor can be a little forgetful these days, you know." But Eleanor saw the wheels turning behind Serafina's eyes, calculating the impact of Clara's unexpected presence, the disruption to their carefully orchestrated evening. Finally, they all sat down. Eleanor surveyed the table, her betraying husband Arthur beside her insidious daughter-in-law, Seraphina, across from them, her dear, oblivious son, Michael, radiating warmth and good cheer, and now her sharp, perceptive daughter, Clara, her presence an unexpected wildcard. The stage was perfectly set. The hidden cameras were silently recording every word, every gesture. Eleanor took a deep breath. The truth was about to be exposed. The clinking of silverware and polite chatter filled the elegant dining room. Michael, ever the amiable son, was praising the beef bourguignon, completely unaware of the storm about to break. Clara, seated across from Eleanor, observed her mother with a quiet intensity, her eyes missing nothing. Arthur and Seraphina, emboldened by Eleanor's continued frailty, had relaxed, their stolen glances becoming bolder, their whispers more frequent. Eleanor slowly raised her wine glass, her movements deliberate. The crystal shimmered in the candlelight. For the first time in months, her voice rang out, clear and strong, cutting through the pleasantries like a finely honed blade. "A toast," she announced, her gaze sweeping over each face at the table. "To family, to the people we trust most in the world." In the dining room mirror, reflecting the flickering candlelight, Eleanor saw her true self. Not the confused, fading woman they intended her to be, not the victim they thought they had created. She saw a woman on the precipice of reclaiming her life, her spirit burning with an unyielding resolve. As the glasses clinked, a sound both festive and ominous, Michael beamed, genuinely happy. Arthur and Seraphina, though initially startled by Eleanor's sudden clarity, quickly masked it with polite smiles. Eleanor lowered her glass, her eyes locking onto Arthur's. A cold, hard glint entered her gaze. "I have something important to tell all of you." The sudden shift in her tone, the undeniable strength in her voice, immediately captured everyone's attention. The atmosphere in the room shifted, growing taut, heavy with unspoken tension. Clara looked up sharply, her eyes widening as she sensed the gravity of the moment. Arthur froze, his glass half raised, his face paling. Seraphina's practiced smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of fear, a dawning apprehension in her eyes. Eleanor took a deep breath, her voice strengthening with each word, leaving no room for doubt or misinterpretation. "I know exactly what's been happening to me." The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating. It was filled with the palpable weight of guilt, the cold grip of fear, and the frantic calculations evident in Arthur's suddenly rigid posture and Seraphina's visibly trembling hands. Michael, still puzzled, looked from one face to another, a frown creasing his brow. "Mom?" Michael asked, his voice laced with confusion. "What are you talking about?" Without a word, Eleanor reached into the pocket of her dress. Her hand emerged, holding the small, unmarked bottle of multivitamins Seraphina had presented earlier. She placed it squarely in the center of the elegantly set table, a silent accusation. "These," Eleanor declared, her voice devoid of its earlier frailness, "are Seraphina's special supplements. The ones she told me were to keep my wonderful mind sharp. The ones she's been so diligently giving me for months now." Her gaze pierced Seraphina. "And these," she continued, her voice rising, "have been making me confused, forgetful, tired. They've been systematically poisoning me." Seraphina's face went ashen, but she was a nurse, a performer. She quickly regained her composure, her voice tight with indignant denial. "Eleanor, what on earth are you saying? Those are just vitamins. You're clearly confused again. You're letting your imagination run wild." Eleanor let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, Seraphina, I'm not confused at all. And my imagination couldn't conjure anything this depraved. These pills," she swept her hand towards the bottle, "contain a dangerous cocktail of potent sedatives and anti-anxiety medications. Not vitamins. They are drugs designed to induce symptoms of severe cognitive impairment. And that, dear Seraphina, has been confirmed by lab analysis." Michael gasped, dropping his fork with a clatter that echoed loudly in the stunned silence. His eyes, wide with shock, darted between his mother and his wife. Arthur sat utterly motionless, a statue carved from fear. Eleanor turned her full, withering gaze on Seraphina. "Now, Seraphina, why don't you tell Michael and Clara about the detailed dosage notes, about the syringes, about the unmarked vials of clear liquid you keep in your purse, full of the same toxic brew? Why don't you tell them how you've been meticulously planning to have me declared incompetent? Serafina's composure finally shattered. She weakly protested, her voice a reedy whisper. Eleanor, please. You're paranoid. You're confused. This is just an old woman's delusion. Her denial lacked conviction, her eyes darting frantically between Arthur, Michael, and Clara, searching for an escape. Am I? Eleanor challenged, her eyes glittering with cold triumph. She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving swiftly. Let's see if my delusions sound familiar to you, Arthur. Or to you, Serafina. With a tap, she played the recording. Arthur's voice, muffled but unmistakable, filled the room, chilling them all to the bone. 2 more weeks of giving her the medication. Then we can have her committed and finally be together openly. The sound of his own voice, so casually damning, caused Arthur to flinch as if struck. Michael stared at his father, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Then Serafina's voice, equally clear, followed. I can't wait, baby. I'm so tired of pretending to care about her. The final words hung in the air, a grotesque testament to their malice, solidifying the sickening truth for everyone present. The elaborate charade had crumbled. The truth, brutal and undeniable, was finally unveiled. The voices from the phone, Arthur's cold calculation, and Serafina's venomous glee, hung in the air like a noxious gas. The effect was immediate and devastating. Michael's face, already pale, went utterly white, drained of all color, a mask of profound shock and betrayal. Clara let out a sharp, guttural gasp, her hands flying to her mouth, tears instantly springing to her eyes. The pleasant dinner party had shattered into 1,000 pieces of brutal truth. Eleanor, fueled by a righteous rage that had simmered for weeks, felt her carefully constructed composure finally break. Her voice, though still strong, was now edged with raw pain and fury. This isn't just about an affair, Michael. This is about systematic poisoning. Your father and your wife have been systematically drugging me for months, planning to have me declared incompetent. They wanted to avoid a messy divorce, the scandal. They wanted to steal everything. Arthur, jolted by the ferocity of her words, finally stirred, attempting to salvage something from the wreckage. Eleanor, that's out of context. You're misinterpreting. Eleanor cut him off, her voice cracking with the depth of her hurt. Misinterpreting? You were going to drug me into a psychiatric facility, Arthur, so you could openly pursue your sordid affair with your son's wife, so you could destroy my mind, my reputation, my life, all to satisfy your twisted desires. Serafina, seeing Michael's stunned, horrified gaze fixed on her, suddenly burst into theatrical tears. Oh, Michael, darling, it's not like that. Eleanor has been so difficult lately. She's been so confused. We were just trying to help her. We were worried about her mental state. Her words were punctuated by sobs, a desperate attempt to manipulate her husband. Clara, her eyes blazing, slammed her hand on the table. Help her? By planning to commit her to a mental institution? That's your idea of help, Serafina? Dosing her with sedatives until she couldn't tell up from down? Arthur shockingly piped up, his voice tinged with a chilling casualness. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, Clara. Just long enough for us to sort things out. His callousness, his utter lack of empathy, chilled Eleanor's blood. She let out a short, bitter laugh devoid of any humor. Not permanent. You were planning to lock me away indefinitely, Arthur. You weren't helping me. You were trying to get rid of me. I needed protection, but not from myself. I needed protection from you two. Michael, who had been silent, absorbing the crushing weight of the revelations, finally spoke. His voice was raw, filled with a pain so deep it twisted Eleanor's heart. How long? He asked, his eyes bloodshot and devastated, fixed on Serafina. How long have you been lying to me? Drugging my mother? When Serafina instinctively reached out to him, he flinched, recoiling as if her touch burned him. Arthur, cornered, finally caved. The affair, it started about 8 months ago. Serafina, seeing no way out, added in a choked whisper, we started giving Eleanor the medication. About 6 months ago, to be together permanently. Permanently? Clara spat, her anger erupting. Permanently meant getting rid of our mother, so you two could just waltz into her life and take everything she had. Michael looked from his father to his wife, his face a canvas of devastation. All this time, you were poisoning my mother, and I was just, what, an unwitting accomplice? Bringing you into the house, letting you help her? The realization of his own complicity, however unintentional, was clearly tearing him apart. Eleanor then delivered the final crushing blow. And to be clear, Serafina, the lab analysis confirmed that at higher dosages, the drugs you were administering could have been fatal. Was that your ultimate plan, Serafina? A fatal overdose? To make it look like a tragic accident due to my frailty? Serafina could only stare, her mouth agape, her face utterly devoid of color. Her silence was more damning than any confession, a chilling confirmation of her murderous intent. The room was heavy with the weight of it, the undeniable, horrifying truth. Eleanor stood, her chair scraping against the floor, the sound sharp in the silence. Her voice was steady now, cold as ice. Every trace of her earlier feigned confusion vanished. Get out. Both of you, get out of my house, now. Her gaze was unflinching as she looked at Arthur, then Serafina. Or I will call the police, and you can explain all of this to them. Serafina, finding a sliver of her defiance, rose, her eyes flashing. You can't prove anything, Eleanor. It's your word against ours, a confused old woman against a concerned husband and daughter-in-law. Eleanor allowed a thin, cruel smile to grace her lips. Oh, but I can, Serafina. Every word spoken tonight, every confession, every revealing glance. It's all been recorded. The hidden cameras I installed have captured everything. She gestured subtly around the room, her gaze resting on the tiny, almost invisible lenses. And let's not forget the previous recordings I have of Arthur and you, planning my commitment, discussing my symptoms, and how well the medication was working. Every lie, every betrayal, every murderous intent, it's all there for the police, for the lawyers, and for a jury to hear. 6 months had passed since that unforgettable Last Supper, and Eleanor had found a quiet peace in her new reality. Her old house, once a fortress of presumed love and security, now felt like a prison cell of betrayal. She had sold it swiftly, disentangling herself from every physical reminder of Arthur and Serafina's scheme. Now she resided in a charming, cozy cottage nestled by a small lake, a space entirely her own, filled with light and genuine serenity. Here, surrounded by her curated treasures and the quiet hum of nature, she was free. A text from Clara pinged on her phone. Trial update, prosecution rested today. Evidence was overwhelming. Eleanor smiled faintly. The trial had progressed swiftly, a testament to the airtight evidence she had meticulously gathered. The recordings, the lab analyses, Serafina's dosage notes, it had all painted an undeniable picture of their heinous plot. Arthur and Serafina had been charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and elder abuse. Eleanor, with a hardened resolve, had refused every single plea deal. There would be no easy way out for them. Michael, her son, had filed for divorce immediately after the confrontation. His marriage to Serafina was formally dissolved 3 months prior, a necessary severance from the woman who had poisoned his mother and his family's peace. He was slowly, painstakingly healing. He had recently met someone new, a kind woman named Lily, and was cautiously rebuilding his life, a testament to resilience even in the face of profound betrayal. Eleanor was proud of him, understanding the depth of pain he had endured. A few weeks after Clara's text, her daughter paid a visit to the cottage. Over tea on the sun-drenched patio, Clara revealed a chilling development. Mom, there's more on Serafina. The police reopened some old cases. Clara's voice was grim. It turns out Serafina had worked at 2 different nursing homes before she met Michael. In both places, 2 elderly patients under her care died under what were deemed natural causes at the time, similar symptoms to what you experienced. Eleanor felt a cold dread creep through her veins. Serafina wasn't just an amateur villain. She was a predator. So, she's a serial poisoner? Eleanor whispered, the horror of it sinking in. They're investigating, Clara confirmed, Her charges have been upgraded to multiple counts of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The investigations into those previous deaths have been officially reopened. The news, while horrifying, brought a perverse sense of justice. Serafina would face the full weight of her monstrous deeds. Arthur, in his usual cowardice, had tried to claim he was manipulated by Serafina, a helpless pawn in her wicked game. But the prosecutor, armed with Eleanor's recordings, had dismissed his claims with disdain. The clear evidence of his equal partnership in the planning, his enthusiasm for the commitment, his casual discussions of her decline, it all pointed to a man who was a willing, active participant. Then, the final brutal piece of the puzzle emerged. An insurance investigation, triggered by the ongoing criminal proceedings, revealed that Arthur had increased Eleanor's life insurance policy to a staggering $2 million precisely 8 months ago, the very month his affair with Serafina had begun. It wasn't just about commitment, it was about profit, about her death. Eleanor sat with that knowledge, processing the twisted, monetary value they had placed on her life, on her demise. She understood now, with absolute clarity, the difference between true love and insidious manipulation. The love she had given Arthur had been genuine, but his had been a calculated transaction, ultimately sealed by a life insurance policy. One evening her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but she answered. It was Arthur. His voice, once so commanding, was now reduced to a whimpering mess, full of pleas and desperate blame. "Eleanor, please, you have to help me. Serafina, she twisted everything. You know how manipulative she is." Eleanor listened, emotionless. When he finished his pathetic litany, she spoke, her voice steady and cold. "Arthur, your words no longer have any power over me. You made your choices. Now you will live with the consequences." She hung up, the silence that followed more potent than any argument. He was a ghost of her past, a shadow that could no longer touch her. Michael visited frequently now. He was making plans to move out of the house he had shared with Serafina, eager to start fresh. They talked for hours, not about the past, but about the future, about healing. Eleanor looked around her small cottage, the sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. This wasn't just a house, it was a sanctuary, a place where she could remember her true self, a woman who didn't need permission to exist, who knew her worth, and who would never, ever be a victim again. 3 weeks later, the phone rang again. It was Clara, her voice filled with a quiet triumph. "Mom, they have the verdict. Arthur got 15 years for conspiracy and elder abuse, and Serafina got life without parole." Eleanor closed her eyes, a wave of profound relief washing over her. Justice. It was slow and the wounds would never fully heal, but justice had been served. That evening, Eleanor sat on her patio, watching the first stars begin to prick the darkening sky. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. She felt a profound sense of freedom, a deep, abiding peace. Her life, which they had tried to end, was just beginning. She raised her glass, not of wine but of cool water, to the vast, indifferent heavens. "To second chances," she whispered, her voice carrying on the night air, "and to never forgetting one's inner strength against those who try to break you."